As the turmoil caused by the ancient heavenly palace gradually subsided, the northern domain once again trembled. The source of this tremor was the establishment of Mu Manor. One had expected that the Northern Realm Alliance, which had once dominated the northern domain, would suddenly dissolve at lightning speed. That in its place stood Mu Manor. What shocked the forces of the northern domain even more was that the head of Mu Manor was not the most powerful mandala, but Mu Chen. Mu Chen's name was not unfamiliar to the powerful beings of the northern domain. His glorious achievements over the years had made him the number one among the younger generation. After the events surrounding the ancient heavenly palace, he even showed signs of overshadowing the younger generation of Luo continent. Such accomplishments were truly admirable, making him a figure of extraordinary talent. However, no matter how brilliant his achievements were, many older and more established powers still viewed him as a junior. They felt he was far from qualifying as a ruler of a domain. Thus, various forces secretly doubted the future of Mu Manor. Yet, as they sat back and waited for the show, the next turn of events left them stunned. The top forces of the northern domain, such as Xun'er Palace, 10,000 Saints Mountain, and Netherworld Palace, unexpectedly declared that they would merge with Mu Manor and recognize Mu Chen as their leader. When this news spread, it caused not only a stir in the northern domain but also drew the attention of some of the most powerful and transcendent forces of Luo continent. This was because the newly established Mu Manor now boasted 6 Lower Earth Supremes and 1 Perfect Earth Supreme. Such a lineup was impressive enough to rank at the top of the entire Luo continent, not just in the northern domain. In the past, the dominant forces of Luo continent had looked down upon the constantly warring northern domain as no truly heavyweight power had emerged there. Had it not been for the region's strong sense of exclusivity, the top forces would have long since extended their hands, gradually devouring it. But now, the northern domain had finally produced a heavyweight force, one that had even merged with several top powers. It was easy to imagine that Mu Manor would become the undisputed ruler of the northern domain. With this foundation, Mu Manor had also risen to the ranks of the powerful forces of Luo continent, gaining the ability to expand outward. In the coming years, Mu Manor was certain to become another behemoth on Luo continent. If they were to acquire a heavenly supreme figure, it was not hard to imagine that they might one day have the qualifications to dominate Luo continent, becoming a superpower in the Great Thousand Worlds, commanding billions of lives and infinite resources. And so, 3 days later, Mu Manor was officially established. The headquarters of Mu Manor was naturally set up in the former Great Luo Heaven. On this day, the leaders of all forces in the northern domain were present, and even some forces from the surrounding areas gathered there. They all knew that once Mu Manor was established, the northern domain would become its exclusive backyard. These forces, which had managed to survive amid the competition of top forces, would have only one way to survive in the future: to hold tightly to Mu Manor. Before the Great Luo Heaven main hall, Mu Chen stood with his hands behind his back. In front of the main hall was a vast plaza, now covered by a sea of people. These people were all from the elite forces of Great Luo Heaven, Netherworld Palace, 10,000 Saints Mountain, and others. From now on, they would be the foundation of Mu Manor. Their gazes were all focused on Mu Chen, filled with reverence, as they knew that from now on, their supreme leader would be the young man before them. A strong wind blew, but the plaza remained silent, with the leaders of various forces standing at the edges, trembling in fear, clearly subdued by the atmosphere. They knew that from now on, Mu Manor would dominate the northern domain. Standing on the steps, Mu Chen, feeling the reverent gazes, couldn't help but reflect. Just a few years ago, when he first arrived in the northern domain, he was just an unknown little pawn. Who could have imagined that the little pawn back then would become the ruler of the northern domain today? Faced with such earth-shattering changes, even Mu Chen, who had never been particularly interested in controlling a faction, couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This transformation was a testament to his growth. The fledgling eagle of the past had finally soared to the 9 heavens. Mu Chen slightly turned his head and looked at Jiuyo. At this moment, she was dressed in a black combat suit, her slender and graceful figure exuding a captivating aura as she noticed Mu Chen's gaze. A charming smile appeared on her cold and stunning face. Back then, she had brought Mu Chen, who had just stepped into the Supreme Realm, to the Northern Domain BTTH that time. The young man was fresh and inexperienced, still showing signs of immaturity. She had protected him all the way, even when they entered the great Luo Heaven Domain in the beginning. She had fully shielded him. However, the young man never let her down. Within just a few short years, he grew rapidly through countless trials. Now, he had even stepped into the Earth's supreme realm ahead of her and had become the master of Mu Manor. Back then, she had known that Mu Chen was like a hidden dragon in the depths of the abyss. However, even she hadn't anticipated just how fast his rise would be. The young man who had once followed her had already begun to exude the presence of a supreme powerhouse. Given time, the young man before her could undoubtedly stand at the peak of the great thousand worlds, alongside the Flame Emperor, Martial Ancestor, and other top-tier figures. Boom! As Juyo's thoughts swirled, an ancient bell's chime suddenly echoed through the heavens and earth. Upon hearing the bell, Mu Chen took a step forward, then raised his hand and waved fiercely. Instantly, the countless powerful individuals present witnessed the sky above them begin to distort before a massive tear appeared in the fabric of space. From that rift, faint images of mountains and rivers could be seen, almost as if another world was hidden within. Boom! When the spatial rift appeared, a vast and astonishing surge of spiritual energy, like crashing ocean waves, began pouring out from within. The spiritual energy in the great Luo heaven was already rich, making it an ideal place for cultivation. However, with the opening of this rift, the spiritual energy in the land surged to an entirely new level. Such overwhelming spiritual energy caused great commotion among the powerful individuals present. They stared at the rift with burning gazes, and whispers of excitement soon erupted. Is that the ancient heavenly palace? I can't believe such a paradise actually fell into Mu Manor's hands. With it as their foundation, Mu Manor's growth will be unstoppable. No wonder even top figures like Lu Tiandao and the Lord of the Netherworld Palace were willing to give up their old legacies and join Mu Manor. The various factions were abuzz with shock, and the elite members of forces like Shantian Palace, the Netherworld Palace, and 10,000 Saints Mountain displayed gleeful expressions. They had long heard that Mu Chen had taken control of the ancient heavenly palace and would soon integrate it into Mu Manor. This meant that they, too, would have the opportunity to cultivate in such a treasure land. For them, this was nothing short of a divine blessing. After all, there was no other place like it in the entire Tianluo continent. From now on, all disciples of Mu Manor will have access to the heavenly palace for cultivation. Those with exceptional talent may even gain favor from the scripture pavilion, selecting among the supreme dharmakayas, divine abilities, or even the great divine abilities. Mu Chen's clear and resonant voice rang out across the heavens and earth. We thank the Mansion Master. As Mu Chen's voice fell, numerous factions, whether from the great Luo Heaven Domain, Shantian Palace, or the Netherworld Palace, dropped to one knee in ecstatic reverence. Their voices, filled with fervent gratitude, echoed through the skies. In the face of such an irresistible temptation, not only those present, but even the onlookers from various factions couldn't help but feel envious. The chance to select from such high-level divine abilities was enough to make anyone's heart race. For regular people, let alone Earth Supremes, the prospect of obtaining such abilities would be irresistible. Had this been anyone else, they would have scoffed at such a claim. But now, with the ancient heavenly palace firmly in Mu Manor's hands, no one doubted Mu Chen's confidence. Mu Chen, seeing the excitement of the various factions, couldn't help but curl his lips. As tempting as the great divine abilities were, even he couldn't help but be moved. After all, he didn't possess such abilities yet. Unfortunately, many of the divine abilities stored in the ancient heavenly palace were hidden in the scripture pavilion, and even he couldn't forcefully take them. All he could do was sigh in longing. After thoroughly winning over the loyalty of his subordinates, Mu Chen once again flicked his sleeve, and suddenly a streak of light shot out from the ancient heavenly palace, landing atop a mountain and transforming into a massive stone door. This door is called the Dragon Ascension Gate. From now on, anyone who wishes to join my Mu Manor must pass through this gate. Only those who succeed will be recognized as disciples of my Mu Manor. Now that Mu Manor was gaining tremendous momentum, it was expected that countless prodigies and powerful individuals would flock to join. However, Mu Chun did not want just anyone to join, as it would be harmful to the integrity of the manor. But with the trial of the Dragon Ascension Gate, those who were unworthy would be weeded out. Afterward, only those who passed the trial would undergo further character evaluation before being accepted as true disciples of Mu Manor. With these methods in place, Mu Chun believed that Mu Manor would rise like a comet over the Tianluo continent. Master is wise. At this moment, all the people who were already disciples of Mu Manor wholeheartedly agreed. Initially, they had some reservations about joining, but after seeing Mu Chen's repeated displays of authority, they were fully convinced. Now, seeing that others had to undergo such trials to join, they couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority that it seemed that Mu Manor wasn't a place anyone could just join, and they were fortunate to have joined early, avoiding many of the challenges others would. Mu Chen looked at the crowd kneeling in the plaza, a deep sigh escaping his lips. He then lifted his head and gazed at the distant sky, his lips pressed together tightly. Now that the establishment of Mu Manor was complete, it was time for him to set off. The grand founding ceremony of Mu Manor stirred up a frenzy across the northern domain and Tianluo continent, but gradually began to quiet down. Surprisingly, despite the fanfare, Mu Manor did not create any more commotion. Instead, it slowly settled, with no signs of aggressive expansion. It seemed as if Mu Manor only intended to consolidate its position in the northern domain, which allowed many of the concerned factions to breathe a sigh of relief. What they didn't know was that the most powerful forces within Mu Manor, including Mu Chun and Mandala, had already left the manor and embarked on their journey to the Western Heaven Realm. Tianluo Continent, Central Region, Sun City. In the center of the city stood an enormous teleportation spirit array, the farthest reaching teleportation array on the entire Tianluo continent. Anyone wishing to travel far from the continent would have to pass through this array. Countless light streaks darted back and forth around the spirit array, filling the area with a vibrant and bustling atmosphere. The immense spiritual energy in the air painted the sky in brilliant colors to this moment. 6 figures stood outside the array. The leader was a tall, exceptionally young man, his eyes filled with interest as he observed the massive spirit array in front of him, clicking his tongue in admiration. This teleportation array is truly remarkable. Its complexity rivals that of a Grandmaster-level spirit array. The young figure, Mu Chun, said with awe. He and his group had left the northern domain several days ago, their destination being this teleportation array, the farthest reaching on the Tianluo continent. It said that this teleportation array was built by a high-level spirit array Grandmaster, and its cost was at least hundreds of millions of supreme spiritual liquid. Mandala beside Mu Chun added with a sigh. The farther the teleportation array's range, the more precious the materials required, making its construction all the more difficult. Furthermore, hiring a high-level spirit array Grandmaster came at a steep price. Mu Chen couldn't help but marvel at the costs involved. No wonder there was none of such caliber in the northern domain. With your skill in spirit arrays, Master, it won't be long before we have an array like this in the northern domain. Lu Tiandao, who was standing behind Mu Chun, added with a smile. Having adapted to Mu Chen's new role, they now spoke comfortably, calling him Master without hesitation. Mu Chun smiled at the remark and teased. As long as Elder Lu is willing to contribute 200 million supreme spiritual liquid, I can have a teleportation array like this built for the northern domain anytime. Lu Tiandao shook his head with a wry smile. 200 million supreme spiritual liquid. Unless he sold himself, he couldn't possibly gather that much. Even if they drained all the resources of Shantian Palace, it still wouldn't be enough. That amount of money could even buy a mid-tier sacred artifact. The others, who were standing nearby, looked at the disgruntled Lu Tiandao and couldn't help but smile mischievously. Mu Chen glanced at them. This time, the group accompanying him to the Western Heaven Realm was not large. Apart from him and Mandala, there were only Lu Tiandao, the Lord of the Netherworld Palace, the Demon Emperor, and the old serpent ghost that as for the ancestor of myriad saints from 10,000 Saints Mountain. He had been left behind at Mu Manor due to his cautious nature. After all, the newly established Mu Manor needed someone of Earth Supreme level to watch over it. This time, even 9 Nether had not come. Given that they were heading to the Luo God clan, there was no point for someone without Earth Supreme strength to join. Moreover, 9 Nether, with his pride, didn't want to become a burden that he decided to stay at Mu Manor, where he could make use of the Heavenly Palace River's power to accumulate strength and break through to the Earth Supreme level. Even so, the lineup of Mu Chen's group was still extremely impressive. 1 Earth Supreme perfected, and 5 lower Earth Supremes. With such a formation, they could almost dominate the Tianluo continent. "We depart now," Mandala said softly, glancing at Mu Chen. "We'll pass through dozens of large and small continents along the way. Even with full speed, it will take at least 20 days to reach the Western Heaven Realm's Western Heaven. Time is tight," Mu Chen murmured as he calculated the time, then sighed. "Let's get going." Upon hearing this, everyone nodded. Without further hesitation, they moved as one, their figures transforming into streaks of light as they rushed into the massive teleportation spirit array. Mu Chen waved his sleeve, and tens of thousands of drops of supreme spiritual liquid flew out, falling into the central groove of the array. Mandala entered the teleportation coordinates into the spatial compass. Immediately, the spirit array burst into dazzling spiritual light, and space distorted that in the next moment. A vortex formed and swallowed Mu Chen and his companions completely. When the spiritual light faded, the figures of the 6 people had already disappeared. The Great Thousand Worlds, vast and endless. The Western Heaven continent, located in the western part of the Great Thousand Worlds, is an ancient land. While it may not compare to Tianluo continent in terms of territory, the peak powers that have emerged from here far surpass those of the supercontinent. In the Great Thousand Worlds, it is often said that the Western Heaven continent is marked by 2 dazzling symbols, past and present. The past refers to the ancient period when a beauty named Luo Li, from the Western Heaven's Western Heaven realm, rose to fame as the most beautiful woman in the Great Thousand Worlds. Her name echoed across the realms, even reaching the ears of the extraterritorial clans. In those days, countless proud Earth Supremes fell at her feet, entranced by her beauty. What was even more terrifying was that this woman, renowned across the Great Thousand Worlds, was also one of the strongest peak powerhouses of the time. Her strength and beauty have been passed down through countless generations, remaining legendary even after millennia. The present refers to the current situation of the Western Heaven continent, which is home to a superpower that dominates the realm. This power's name is the Western Heaven Battle Hall, and the master of the Western Heaven Battle Hall is known as the Battle Emperor. He is a true Earth Supreme. The Western Heaven Hall, the Emperor of 100 battles, whose battle might is unparalleled. This saying, though possibly exaggerated, is enough to convey the immense power of the Western Heaven Battle Emperor. Because of his existence, the Western Heaven Hall is one of the superpowers in the Great Thousand Worlds. Not only is the Western Heaven continent under its control, but even nearby continents are also within its sphere of influence, worshipping it as their lord. It can be said, without a doubt, that the Battle Emperor of Western Heaven is the undisputed ruler of this region in the western part of the Great Thousand Worlds. Countless forces, races, and beings bow before his might. However, most of the time, the Western Heaven Battle Hall maintains a detached position. It doesn't interfere with the conflicts between the various forces in its domain, much like a giant paying no heed to the struggles of ants beneath its feet. Therefore, although there is a superpower in place, the Western Heaven continent and the surrounding realms are often embroiled in endless conflicts. In some ways, they are even more chaotic and bloodstained than the Tianluo continent, which lacks such a dominant force. But regardless, Earth Supremes are the peak powerhouses of the Great Thousand Worlds. As long as the Battle Emperor exists, the rules of this region will remain unchanged. The Tianluo continent and the Western Heaven continent are separated by vast distances. Between them, there are dozens of large and small continents to cross. Even though the numerous spirit arrays significantly reduced the distance, completing this journey in less than a month is still a daunting task. Even a mighty Earth Supreme would find it overwhelming. However, despite being aware of this, Mu Chen didn't have any time to rest. Ever since leaving Tianluo continent, he had been traveling at full speed with barely any pauses. Fortunately, the people accompanying him were all at the Earth Supreme level. Otherwise, such a high-intensity journey would have been impossible for even the 9 Nether to keep up with. Even though Lu Tiandao and others had deep cultivation and could barely keep up, they were exhausted and complaining. But Mu Chen ignored their complaints. He had to reach the Luo God clan before the Luo Shen ceremony began. If anything went wrong with Luo Li, he couldn't bear it. Despite being weary himself, he remained silent, focusing all his energy on the journey. Seeing him push himself like this, Lu Tiandao and the others could only helplessly follow, biting their teeth, knowing they couldn't afford to fall behind as they now regarded Mu Chen as their leader. After more than 20 days of grueling travel, they were finally approaching the Western Heaven continent. Xiling continent was the nearest landmass to the Western Heaven continent at that moment. Mu Chen and his group appeared in a magnificent city on this continent. Before them stood another spirit array. Mu Chen looked at the spirit array with fatigue on his face, but there was a hint of excitement that could not be hidden. As long as they passed through this array, he would be able to directly reach the Western Heaven continent's Western Heaven realm. Everyone, you've worked hard. Mu Chen turned around and looked at Lu Tiandao and the others' weary faces, clasping his hands in gratitude. Lu Tiandao and the others smiled wryly and shook their heads, clearly too tired to even speak. Mu Chen didn't say more. He stepped into the spirit array, throwing out the supreme spiritual liquid and feeling the surrounding spatial fluctuations. A vortex of space formed around him, gradually enveloping his body. Mu Chen's eyes slowly closed at that moment, but his hand, hidden in his sleeve, couldn't help but tremble. It was the excitement, overwhelming him. He took a deep breath. It felt like he was reliving that day when the girl turned back to embrace him tightly as she left. That moment made his heart tremble. Since that day, he had been waiting for this moment. He had waited far too long. Luo Li, I'm coming. Are you okay? Western Heaven Continent, Western Heaven Realm, Luo God Clan. In the heart of the Luo God Clan, a towering city stood. The city exuded an ancient aura, clearly having experienced the passage of time and carrying its own history. This city was divided by a vast river that flowed through it, meandering as it circled the city, creating a loop that enveloped it. The river was extremely mysterious, its colors resembling that of the stars at times. It even appeared brighter than the starry sky. The river roared, nourishing the city. The river was bottomless, seemingly impossible to measure. Once, an Earth Supreme entered it, trying to explore its depths. However, after nearly half a month, he still couldn't find its limit, and ultimately exhausted all his spiritual energy, nearly becoming part of the river's nourishment. It was truly unfathomable. This mysterious river was the holy river of the Luo God clan, and many of its people would come to worship and pray on specific days. The river was known as the Luo River. The city surrounding this river was called Luo God City. The most central and important city of the Luo God clan. It was considered an inviolable holy city by all Luo God clan members. Recently, Luo God City had become the focal point for countless Luo God clan members. Many had traveled from far and wide to gather around the city, their eyes full of eager anticipation. Because Luo Tianshan, the leader of their Luo God clan, will soon hold the Luo God ceremony for their current empress during this period. The Luo God clan once enjoyed great prosperity, but now it is gradually declining. Years ago, the clan was in turmoil, facing internal strife and external threats, with countless members of the Luo God clan slaughtered or even enslaved. These tragic events plunged the people of the Luo God clan into despair. However, a few years ago, things suddenly began to change. At that time, the princess, who had once been highly respected in the Luo God clan, returned to the clan. Over the next few years, through numerous strategies and her captivating charisma, she managed to gradually stabilize the once shaky Luo God clan. After that, she led the Luo God clan army and powerful warriors to the front lines, where the battlefield was engulfed in flames. She fought bitterly against the Blood God clan and, in the end, repelled their offensive time and again, bringing several years of peace to the people of the Luo God clan. While she was constantly on the move, protecting her people and defending the borders of the Luo God clan, her influence within the clan grew. Her charm not only touched the people of the Luo God clan, who had once been filled with despair, but also gathered many powerful figures from the royal family, particularly the younger generation, around her. As a result, the once crumbling Luo God clan began to show an unexpected resilience. Even inspiring fear in their enemies, it seemed as though they were on the verge of a resurgence. Before long, the entire small Western Heaven realm knew that within the Luo God clan, there was a future empress who could inherit the throne. Within the Luo God clan, this future empress's momentum had even surpassed that of her grandfather, Luo Tianshun. Over the years, both the common folk and the royal family members had increasingly demanded that she ascend to the throne. This Luo God ceremony, therefore, is the most important ritual before her ascension. If all goes smoothly, she will officially become the empress of the Luo God clan. At that point, even the resistance from some royal family members will be completely eradicated. United as one, even though the Luo God clan may not regain its former strength, it will undoubtedly become a solid force at that time. No matter whether it's the Blood God clan or the other two divine clans, if they want to conquer the Luo God clan, they will have to be prepared to face severe defeat. Thus, this Luo God ceremony is of utmost importance that it has brought countless members of the Luo God clan, who have traveled from far and wide, to Luo God City, all waiting for the moment when their empress will ascend to the throne. That moment will determine the rise or fall of the Luo God clan. Luo God City. In the central area of the city, a series of magnificent palaces radiated an aura of nobility and invincibility. This is the Luo God Palace, the residence of the royal family. At this moment, on a high platform within the palace, a slender figure stood gracefully. She wore a moon-white gown, with cloud-like sleeves where purple gold threads formed soaring phoenixes, exuding a noble air. Her figure was extraordinarily perfect, with delicate, long legs and a slender waist that could be clasped with a single hand. Above her waist, a graceful, enticing curve led up to a slender, swan-like neck. But when her delicate face appeared, all other beauty paled in comparison. It was a face so exquisitely enchanting that it captivated the soul, with skin as fair as snow and eyebrows like ink. Especially her pair of eyes, which made this beauty reach its peak. Her eyes were as clear as glass, reflecting the starlit sky as she gazed upwards, making the entire world appear to shimmer. It was a breathtaking beauty that seemed almost suffocating. Her hair, like a galaxy, cascaded down her back in a waterfall, making her appear as if she had stepped out of a painting. At this moment, the breathtakingly beautiful girl quietly gazed into the distance. A longing appeared in her eyes, causing her slender brows to furrow slightly. "Mu-chun, are you well now?" she murmured softly. The girl, who had always been strong before countless members of the Luo God clan, now revealed an incredibly rare softness and longing. "You're still thinking about that boy?" A somewhat aged voice suddenly echoed behind her. Hearing the sound behind her, the girl's emotions, as fleeting as the shimmering light in her eyes, quickly dissipated. The slight frown on her brows eased, and in that instant, an aura of indescribable majesty and dignity radiated from her. She slightly turned her head, gazing at the elderly man standing behind her, and said in a calm voice, "Grandfather, are you planning to strip away even this small bit of authority from me?" The elderly man behind her couldn't help but let out a wry laugh, feeling both helpless and relieved as he said, "Your reputation within the Luo God clan is now even higher than mine, an old man. I don't have the guts to do that. However, Luo Li, after all these years, that boy has been silent for so long. Are you really planning to wait aimlessly like this forever?" The girl before him was, of course, Luo Li, who had been separated from Mu-chun for many years. Over these years, she had undergone significant changes. The youthful beauty she once had now fully blossomed, transforming into a mesmerizing beauty that could topple kingdoms. Her temperament had also undergone a profound shift. She was no longer the quiet and graceful young girl who used to follow Mu Chen around. Instead, she had gradually developed a regal and awe-inspiring presence, resembling that of an empress. The elderly man behind her was none other than the current clan leader of the Luo God clan, Luo Tianxun. Upon hearing Luo Tianxun's question, Luo Li merely smiled lazily, her expression conveying a clear message to her grandfather, not to ask such meaningless questions anymore. Seeing this, Luo Tianxun became somewhat agitated and said, "After all these years, that boy must have encountered something." Before he could finish, Luo Li's brows immediately shot up, and her eyes, filled with anger, locked onto him. He was forced to swallow his words. Over the years, Luo Li had developed such an imposing presence that even he, as her grandfather, dared not upset her. Luo Tianxun shook his head with a wry smile. As Luo Li gradually stabilized the Luo God clan, her reputation had spread along with her beauty. By now, not only was her name famous in the Western Heaven realm, but it also echoed throughout the entire Western Heaven continent. As a result, countless talented young men from all corners of the continent had been drawn to her, seeking her favor. Additionally, some powerful factions, not weaker than the Luo God clan and perhaps even stronger, had expressed interest in forming marriage alliances with them. Such alliances would bring immense benefits, enough to deter the covetous Blood God clan. Even the Blood God clan had sent representatives, offering their most outstanding young members in marriage to resolve the long-standing enmity between the two factions. However, every single proposal was firmly rejected by Luo Li. She had made it clear that to grow strong, the Luo God clan had to rely on their own strength. Any external forces would eventually fade away. If the Luo God clan did not grow strong, no marriage alliance would be lasting. Her reasoning was widely accepted by the majority of the Luo God clan, especially among the younger generation, who strongly supported her stance. However, only Luo Tianxun knew that this was likely just an excuse for his granddaughter. Deep in her heart, there was already someone she had always waited for. Given her nature, it seemed unlikely that she would ever change. That damn boy. Thinking of this, Luo Tianxun couldn't help but grit his teeth. Back then, he had always believed that as long as he took Luo Li away, Mu Chen would gradually become a mere passerby in her life. After all, he couldn't fathom what qualifications that boy, who was merely cultivating in a spiritual academy, had to venture into the vast world and return to stand before Luo Li. But clearly, he had underestimated his granddaughter's stubbornness and persistence. All these years, she had been waiting. For him, still waiting in longing sigh. Although reluctant, Luo Tianxun ultimately refrained from saying more. He let out a long sigh, his expression darkening as he looked at Luo Li. He spoke softly, "Luo Li, if all goes well with this Luo God ceremony, you will enter the Earth's supreme realm and become the undisputed empress of the Luo God clan. But you must also know that our enemies, both from within and outside the clan, will not be pleased to see that happen. So, the Luo God ceremony will certainly not be peaceful. This time, even I, your grandfather, do not have much confidence." Luo Li gazed at the elderly face of Luo Tianxun, feeling a slight ache in her nose. She then reached out her slender, jade-like hand and gently took his rough, dry palm in hers. "That I in a soft voice," she said. "No matter the outcome, I will live and die with the Luo God clan." Luo Tianxun nodded heavily, a fierce look flashing across his face. He spoke with determination, "Don't worry. As long as your grandfather is here, I won't let those bastards interfere with you. Let's go. The Luo God ceremony is about to begin." Luo Li gently nodded her head, then turned her gaze toward the distant and unreachable direction, as if she were trying to pierce through the fabric of space itself to see the young figure that she could not even be sure of its whereabouts. Afterward, she resolutely turned and left, but at that moment, a soft voice rang in her heart, firm and unwavering. "Mu Chen, no matter what, I will wait for you." Outside the Luo God Palace, the surging Luo River howled as it passed. This was the confluence point of the Luo River, where the endless river seemed to flow without rest, brimming with boundless vitality. The The Luo God ceremony was about to begin here. As such, the area was already covered with strict defenses. Armies, exuding a sharp aura, guarded both sides of the Luo River. Even in the sky, knights riding thunder cranes formed a protective net. This impregnable defense was so strong that not even a fly could get through. Looking into the distance, one could see the massive crowd stretching along both sides of the Luo River, far beyond the borders of the area. The sea of people extended all the way to the horizon, a chorus of bustling voices echoing throughout. The people of the Luo God clan were here, waiting for the appearance of their queen. They too would witness the success of the Luo God ceremony, and bear witness to the moment when their queen ascended to her true throne. This area had undoubtedly become the focal point of not just the entire Luo God city, but the entire Luo God clan. Boom. Amid the anxious anticipation of countless citizens, the ancient sound of a bell suddenly echoed through the heavens and earth. Whoosh! As the bell sound resonated, several streaks of light shot out from the Luo God palace and landed on a floating platform above the Luo River. The platform, crafted from white jade, gleamed under the sunlight, radiating a beautiful glow. However, at that moment, the countless gazes were not fixed on the platform, but instead on the breathtaking figure standing upon it, one that seemed to overshadow everything else in the world. She stood gracefully on the white jade platform, sunlight casting down upon her. Her hair, as dazzling as the Milky Way, reflected the light, captivating all eyes. Her flawless, delicate face, and her gaze, like the most perfect work of art in the world, stirred the hearts of all who beheld her. Rustle. As she appeared on the white jade platform, the immense crowd, stretching endlessly in the distance, suddenly knelt down, as if blown by a fierce wind. They collapsed one after another, like rice fields bending under the wind, their gazes filled with reverence and fervor as they looked toward the figure on the white jade platform. All hail the queen! Countless deafening voices erupted, resounding through Luo God city, the fervent cries echoing endlessly. Witnessing the intense fervor of the Luo God clan citizens, forces from other regions who had come to observe the Luo God ceremony could not help but be taken aback. They clearly did not expect that the Luo God clan, which had been on the brink of collapse and destruction just a few years ago, now had such a united and fervent morale. This sight made them sigh in admiration, and they looked toward the captivating figure on the white jade platform with astonishment. At this moment, they could not deny that some people in this world possessed an extraordinary charm, a charm that could make all difficulties seem irrelevant, drawing people to them. Clearly, this future queen of the Luo God clan was one of those individuals. On the white jade platform, Luo Li gazed at the countless kneeling figures, her body slightly leaning forward as she lowered her head. Though she did not speak, her aura of elegance and nobility was enough to make anyone fall in awe. My queen! Behind Luo Li, two young figures knelt on one knee, their hands placed on their chests. As they looked toward the figure in front of them, their faces were filled with fervor. Yet, deep in their eyes, there was also a hidden love. Luo Li looked at the two of them. They were the most outstanding youths of the current generation of the Luo God clan. If Mu Chen were here, he would recognize them as the two remarkable young men who had followed Luo Tian God to the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy years ago. One was named Luo Qingya, and the other was Luo Xiao. After several years, their momentum was still formidable. They had already reached the pinnacle of the 9th grade, a level that, despite Luo Li's support in providing the greatest resources, could not hide their own excellence. This Luo God ceremony, someone will surely try to sabotage it. I hope you can do your best to stop them, Luo Li said softly. Over the years, under her guidance, Luo Qingya and Luo Xiao had effectively taken control of all the Luo God clan's armies. Within the military, they held great influence. Unless I die in battle, I will not let the enemy appear before you, Luo Qingya said with a faint smile. His voice was calm, yet firm, without a trace of hesitation or wavering. Even if I die, my body will entangle the enemy, not letting them defile your eyes, Luo Xiao grinned, but his smile was filled with determination and a murderous aura. Luo Li smiled gently, then lightly shook her head, saying, "Do not die." Luo Qingya and Luo Xiu felt a warmth in their hearts, nodding silently. They immediately rose and swiftly moved toward their respective armies, determined not to let any flies interfere with Luo Li, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. Watching them leave, Luo Li's eyes briefly scanned a certain direction. There, another group of people gathered, with 3 elders at the forefront. These 3 individuals emitted powerful spiritual energy fluctuations. They were 3 lower earth supremes. However, when Luo Li saw them, there was no joy in her gaze. Instead, a trace of coldness flashed through her eyes, because these 3 lower earth supremes were from a branch of the Luo God clan's royal family. Within the Luo God clan, they were the second most powerful force, after the royal family itself. But unfortunately, they did not have absolute loyalty to the direct royal bloodline. In fact, over the years, they had secretly tried to weaken the influence of the direct royal bloodline. If it weren't for Luo God suppressing them, they might have already planned to take forceful action and seize the throne. Therefore, for this Luo God ceremony, Luo Li could not rely on them. Instead, she had to guard against them. Tianlong uncle, Luo Li said softly. A tall, muscular middle-aged man, standing next to Luo God, stepped forward. He slightly bowed. His name was Luo Tianlong, and he was one of the 2 lower earth supremes from the direct royal bloodline of the Luo God clan, besides Luo God. Years ago, he and Luo Li's father were sworn brothers, but after her father's death in battle, and due to the internal strife within the Luo God clan, he had become disheartened and withdrew from public life. However, after Luo Li's return, she personally invited him out of seclusion multiple times. Please keep an eye on those people over there, Luo Li instructed Luo Tianlong. Although Luo Tianlong was only a lower earth supreme, it was clearly a challenge for him alone to watch over the 3 lower earth supremes. But with the direct royal bloodline of the Luo God clan in decline, he was the last helper Luo Li could mobilize. Luo Tianlong nodded without hesitation. Thank you for your trouble, Luo Li said with a smile. Luo Tianlong grinned. Your father's greatest contribution to the Luo God clan was giving birth to such an outstanding daughter. I believe the Luo God clan will be stronger in your hands than ever before. So, just give me any orders. Without waiting for Luo Li to speak, he immediately shot out and landed between the group of people and the white jade platform. His gaze coldly swept over the restless individuals, and a murderous intent blatantly appeared on his face, clearly a warning in that direction. The 3 elders also glanced at Luo Tianlong expressionlessly, then turned their eyes to the graceful figure on the white jade platform. Their expressions were slightly complex. After Luo Tianlong left, Luo Li looked at Luo God and lightly nodded. Let's begin. Luo God took a deep breath. Everything Luo Li had arranged earlier was flawless, which greatly pleased him. However, he knew that what they needed to be on guard against wasn't just these people. Luo Li must be aware of this as well. This Luo God ceremony was probably going to be the most dangerous one in years. But no matter how perilous it was, they had no retreat. The white jade platform glowed with intense spiritual light, eventually forming a white jade lotus beneath Luo Li's feet as she sat cross-legged. Her long hair fluttered like a galaxy, making her extraordinarily beautiful in a way that took one's breath away. Luo Li lifted her delicate face and gazed at the countless hopeful eyes. Almost all the Luo God clan's people were eagerly awaiting her success, as it symbolized the future of the Luo God clan. Thus, this time, she absolutely could not afford to fail. Luo Li also took a deep breath at that moment. Then, without hesitation, lightly bit her tongue. Instantly, a spray of crimson blood shot out, falling from the sky and plunging into the surging Luo River below. Boom! As the blood mingled with the Luo River, the river's water immediately turned a deep shade of blood red. Waves began to roll, and countless dark red light spots rose from the river, floating upwards and landing on Luo Li's delicate body. Her moon-white gown slowly transformed into a dark red hue. The dark red grew deeper and deeper, eventually turning into blazing dark red flames. These flames wrapped around Luo Li, burning fiercely. Faintly, it seemed as though an ancient song echoed through the heavens and earth. countless gazes fixed on the dark red flames burning in the sky, their hearts tightening in unison. They all knew. The Luo Shen ceremony had begun.